The orbital stabilizer exploded in a shower of sparks, sending Commander Lysithea Valen tumbling through the escape pod's narrow corridor. Warning signals blared as the small vessel plummeted toward the blue-green planet below. Her expedition, to chart the outer rim of this isolated star system, had gone catastrophically wrong when her ship encountered an uncharted asteroid field. "Computer, calculate survival probability," Lysithea shouted over the wailing alarms. "Probability of survival, 17.3%, the artificial intelligence responded coolly. Lysithea cursed in her native Astrian tongue. The Galactic Concordat strictly forbade contact with pre-spacefaring civilizations, and Earth was at least 3 centuries from achieving true interstellar capability. Yet here she was, about to become the galaxy's most spectacular rule-breaker, if she survived the landing. Initiate emergency protocols. Activate stasis field on impact. The pod tore through Earth's atmosphere, outer hull glowing white-hot. Lysithea strapped herself into the crash harness, 3-fingered hands moving with practiced precision despite her rising panic. Her iridescent skin flickered between deep violet and panicked crimson, the chromatophores that gave her species their renowned beauty now betraying her fear. The last thing she saw before the stasis field activated was a vast expanse of golden grasses rushing up to meet her. When Lysithea awoke, the first thing she noticed was the unfamiliar ceiling, wooden beams, not the metallic composite of her escape pod. The second thing was the pain, a dull ache that permeated her entire body. The third was the man sitting beside the bed, his weathered face a mask of concern and wonder. "You're awake," he said simply, his voice deep and gentle. "Been 3 days. Thought we might lose you." Lysithea's translator implant struggled with the regional dialect but managed a reasonable approximation. She tried to sit up, but her body protested vehemently. "Easy now," the man cautioned, his calloused hand hovering near her shoulder without quite touching her. "Doc Mercer says you've got 4 broken ribs and a concussion, among other things." "My pod," she managed to croak. "Where is my escape pod?" The man, she decided he must be in his mid-30s by human standards, ran a hand through his copper-colored hair. "That metal contraption you fell to Earth in? It's in my barn. Figured you wouldn't want the authorities finding it." Lysithea blinked in surprise, so he understood she wasn't from around here, wasn't from this world at all. "I'm Reeve Halverson," he continued, offering her a cup of water. "This is my ranch. Found you in the north pasture during the meteor shower." She accepted the water gratefully. Lysithea Valen, Senior Commander, Exploratory Division of the Astrian Confederacy. Reeve nodded as if alien commanders crashed on his property every day. "Well, Commander, you've got a problem. Sheriff's been asking about the meteor that fell on my land." And he hesitated, reaching for something on the bedside table. "This was in your hand when I found you." He held up a small metallic disc, her identification medallion. Embedded in it was the quantum-locked DNA pattern that verified her identity across the galaxy. The same pattern that, according to Astrian emergency protocols, marked her as bonded to whoever provided aid in a life-threatening situation. "It glowed when I touched it," Reeve explained. Then these symbols appeared. Lysithea felt her chromatic skin flush deep blue with shock. The emergency protocol had activated. According to the laws of her people, she was now bound to this human rancher, legally married by Astrian standards, and she had absolutely no idea how to explain that to him. "Marriage?" Reeve Halverson's voice cracked on the word, his sun-weathered face a portrait of disbelief. "You're saying that glowing disc thing made us married?" Lysithea's violet skin deepened to indigo with embarrassment as she sat propped up against the pillows of what she'd learned was Reeve's spare bedroom. 3 days had passed since she'd regained consciousness, and her translator implant had finally calibrated properly to his regional accent. "The life bond protocol is an ancient tradition," she explained, fingers tracing the now dormant medallion. "When an Astrian faces death far from home, the one who saves them becomes bonded to ensure the rescued person has protection and advocacy. My ancestors never anticipated it activating with a different species." Outside the window, the Montana landscape stretched endlessly, rolling prairie dotted with grazing cattle, backdropped by distant mountains that reminded her painfully of the Cerulean Ranges on her homeworld, a homeworld now impossibly far away. Reeve paced the weathered wooden floor. So what happens now? Can we unbond or whatever? Normally the bond would be formalized or dissolved within 30 days before the Astrian Council, Lysithea said. But considering interstellar travel is currently beyond your planet's capabilities, so we're stuck like this. Reeve stopped pacing and sank into the chair beside her bed. She noticed he didn't seem as horrified as she might have expected. Curious, these humans. My rescue beacon activated when I crashed, she offered. But given Earth's isolation, it could be years before anyone from the Confederacy responds, if they respond at all. Reeve nodded slowly, processing. Well, I reckon you need a place to stay regardless. The ranch has plenty of room. A sharp bark interrupted them. A large canine, a dog her databank supplied, trotted into the room, fixing intelligent eyes on Lysithea. That's Horizon, Reeve said. Best cattle dog in 3 counties. The animal approached cautiously, sniffing Lysithea's outstretched hand before allowing her to stroke its head. The simple contact brought unexpected comfort. You're taking this remarkably well, she observed. Finding an alien crash-landed on your property. Most humans in your entertainment transmissions would be considerably more alarmed, Reeve shrugged. My grandmother was Blackfeet. She taught me that the universe is bigger and stranger than we can imagine. Besides, he added with a half-smile, you're not the strangest thing to show up here. Last spring I had a mountain lion move into my tool shed. Later that evening, Lysithea ventured outside for the first time. Her legs were unsteady, but the need to assess her situation outweighed discomfort. Reeve walked beside her, close enough to catch her if she fell, but respectfully maintaining distance. The dying sunlight painted the landscape in hues that tugged at her memory. The golden fields reminiscent of Astrian heartlands during harvest season. For a primitive outpost, Earth possessed undeniable beauty. They reached the barn where her pod lay concealed under a tarp. Your secret's safe, Reeve assured her. Told everyone a piece of satellite debris landed here. They bought it. Lysithea activated the pod's diagnostic systems, heart sinking as the damage assessment displayed. The quantum drive is beyond repair. The communication array might be salvageable, but I'll need components your planet doesn't produce yet. She slumped against the pod, the reality of her situation crashing down harder than her landing had been. She was stranded on an undeveloped world, bound to a stranger, with no way home. Reeve watched her carefully, then spoke with quiet certainty. You'll figure it out. And until you do, you have a place here. The simplicity of his statement, the absence of conditions or expectations, caught her off guard. Why would you help me? You know nothing about me or my kind. Reeve's eyes reflected the setting sun as he responded. Because that's what neighbors do out here. We help folks who need helping. Doesn't matter if they're from the next county over or the next solar system. Autumn descended on Reeve's ranch, painting the surrounding grasslands in russet and gold. 2 months had passed since Lysithea's crash landing, and to her surprise, she found herself adapting to Earth's rhythms with increasing ease. Hold the reins looser, Reeve instructed as Lysithea perched atop Ember, the gentlest mare in his small herd. She needs to feel you trust her. Lysithea relaxed her grip, still marveling at these creatures. Astrian transportation had been mechanized. For millennia, the concept of partnering with a biological entity for mobility seemed primitive at first, but she now recognized the elegant symbiosis. There you go. Reeve nodded approvingly. Now give her the signal we practiced. Lysithea pressed her legs against the horse's flanks as she'd been taught. Ember responded immediately, moving from a walk to a trot. A startled laugh escaped Lysithea's lips, her first genuine laughter since arriving on Earth. Behind them, the ranch house stood silhouetted against the Montana sky. Lysithea had spent weeks transforming the spare bedroom into a makeshift lab, cannibalizing components from her pod to construct a rudimentary subspace transmitter. Reeve had watched with fascination as she worked, asking intelligent questions and offering surprisingly useful suggestions when she encountered unfamiliar materials. "Your world is fascinating," she admitted, as they rode side by side along the property's edge. "So primitive technologically, yet..." "Yet what?" Reeve asked, when she trailed off. "Advanced in ways my people have forgotten," she finished. "The Austrian Confederacy spans 17 star systems, but we've lost something in our expansion. The connection to land, to animals. The silence." Reeve nodded, understanding in his eyes. "City folks who move out here say the same thing. Too quiet at first, then they can't imagine living with all that noise again." As they crested a small rise, Lacethea spotted movement in the valley below, a lone figure on horseback moving erratically among Reeve's cattle. Reeve stiffened. Rustlers. Been hitting ranches all across the county. Before she could respond, he was already spurring his horse forward. Lacethea hesitated only briefly before following, her Austrian military training kicking in despite her unfamiliar mount. They galloped down the hillside, Horizon racing alongside them. The cattle thief spotted them and changed direction, heading for a waiting vehicle partially hidden among trees at the property line. "They're getting away!" Lacethea called. Reeve's expression was grimly determined. "Not through my north pasture. They're not. That fence line stops most folks." Understanding dawned on Lacethea as they approached the boundary. While most of Reeve's property used standard barbed wire, the north section featured a formidable barrier, too high for most horses to jump. The rustler reached the fence and hesitated, clearly searching for a way through. That moment of indecision was all Reeve needed. He closed the distance rapidly, Horizon racing ahead to cut off any escape route. What happened next occurred too quickly for Lacethea to process. The rustler pulled something from their jacket, the unmistakable shape of a primitive projectile weapon. They aimed at Reeve. Without conscious thought, Lacethea activated her emergency wrist device, the one piece of Austrian technology she kept on her person at all times. A pulse of energy shot forth, striking the weapon, which instantly superheated in the rustler's hand. They dropped it with a cry of pain, just as Reeve reached them. The confrontation ended swiftly after that, with the rustler surrendering rather than facing Reeve's righteous anger and Horizon's bared teeth. Later, after the local sheriff had collected the would-be cattle thief, Reeve and Lacethea sat on the porch steps, watching the stars emerge. "You saved my life," Reeve said simply, the gravity of the statement hanging between them. "You saved mine first," she replied. "Perhaps we're even now." Reeve turned to face her, his expression serious in the gathering twilight. "That thing you did, with the gun, could cause a lot of trouble if the wrong people found out." "Are you the wrong people, Reeve Halverson?" she asked quietly. He studied her for a long moment before answering. "No, I don't reckon I am." He paused. "But there are folks who'd lock you in a lab if they knew what you could do. What you are." She nodded, the reality of her vulnerability on this planet settling heavily upon her shoulders. "Then it seems our arrangement benefits us both. You get an alien farmhand with occasional useful technology, and I get a place to hide in plain sight." Reeve's laugh was unexpected and warm. "Is that all this is to you? An arrangement?" The question caught her off guard, as did the hollow feeling it produced in her chest. Was that all this was? Lacethea gazed up at the stars, searching for answers in the same sky that had once been her domain. Winter descended upon Montana with fierce determination, transforming Reeve's ranch into a landscape of pristine white that reminded Lacethea of the crystal deserts on Austrian's smallest moon. 6 months had passed since her crash landing, and what had begun as temporary shelter had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. "You're holding that soldering iron like it might bite you," Lacethea observed, leaning against the doorframe of what had once been Reeve's workshop. Now it housed an improbable blend of earth tools and salvaged alien technology. Reeve glanced up from the circuit board he was painstakingly assembling under her instruction. "In my defense, the last one did exactly that." "Only a small shock," she reminded him with the hint of a smile. "Your planet's electrical systems are remarkably inconsistent. Suppose that's why you've got me building this converter. He gestured to their project. A device that would allow her remaining Astrian equipment to draw power from the ranch's solar array. As she moved to assist him, Lysithea caught her reflection in the window. The changes were subtle, but undeniable. Her once regulation short hair now reached her shoulders, and the rigid posture drilled into Astrian officers had softened. More striking was her skin, the iridescent violet now bearing a pattern of darker speckles across her shoulders and face, a physiological response to Earth's particular solar radiation. Outside, snow fell in thick, lazy flakes. In the pasture, cattle huddled together for warmth while Horizon patrolled the perimeter, his dark coat collecting snowflakes. Storm's getting worse, Reeve noted, setting down his tools. Auric called. Said the northern herd might need checking. Make sure they haven't wandered into the low ravine. Lysithea nodded. Tav Orwick was Reeve's nearest neighbor, a gruff elderly man who had accepted her presence with surprising equanimity after Reeve introduced her as a researcher from overseas studying American ranching techniques. Whether Orwick believed the story or simply chose not to question it remained unclear. I'll come with you, she offered, already reaching for the heavy coat Reeve had purchased for her in town. Her Astrian uniform, designed for the controlled climate of spacecraft, provided little protection against Montana winters. The snowmobiles carved twin paths through the fresh powder as they navigated toward the northern boundary of Reeve's property. Despite the biting cold, Lysithea found herself appreciating the stark beauty of the landscape. Astrian worlds were largely urbanized, their wilderness areas carefully managed and preserved like museum pieces. This wild, untamed quality of Earth stirred something primal in her. They located the cattle sheltering in a stand of pines, counting heads to ensure none had strayed. Just as they finished, Reeve's communication device, a cell phone, though its technology seemed laughably primitive to Lysithea, chirped for attention. His expression darkened as he listened to the caller. Understood. We're near that location now. We'll check and report back. What is it? Lysithea asked as he pocketed the device. Orwick spotted unusual lights last night, near where we found your pod. Reeve's eyes met hers, concern evident. Could be nothing. Could be someone found something we missed. The implication hung between them, crystallizing in the cold air. They had been meticulous in removing all traces of her crash. But what if something had remained? What if someone else had received her distress signal? The possibility that other Astrians might have arrived simultaneously thrilled and terrified Lysithea. Return to her people meant resuming her duties, her former life. It meant advanced medical treatment for injuries that still troubled her on cold mornings. It meant home. It also meant leaving Reeve and the ranch that had become her sanctuary. They found nothing at the original crash site, just pristine snow and silence. Yet, as they prepared to return to the ranch, Lysithea's scanner picked up faint energy readings half a kilometer east, in a ravine too steep for their snowmobiles. We'll need to continue on foot, she said, securing her scanner in a pocket. The signature is weak but consistent with Astrian technology. They trudged through knee-deep snow, Reeve insisting on taking the lead despite Lysithea's superior knowledge of what they might encounter. As they descended into the ravine, the energy signature strengthened. There, Reeve pointed to a barely visible metallic gleam beneath a snowdrift. Lysithea's heart pounded as she carefully brushed away the snow, revealing not a rescue beacon or probe as she had anticipated, but a small monitoring device. Its design was unmistakable, hegemony manufacture. This isn't Astrian, she whispered, cold fear replacing anticipation. It's Valkyrie. I'm guessing that's not good news? Reeve asked, tension evident in his voice. The Valkyrie hegemony is a hostile power. They've been in conflict with the Confederacy for decades. She examined the device more closely. This is a planetary assessment tool. They're evaluating Earth for potential conquest. Spring arrived, but Lysithea found no joy in the seasons. Renewal. For 3 months, she and Reeve had been tracking Valkyrie reconnaissance devices across his property and beyond. The monitoring network was expanding, a prelude to invasion that only they were aware of. 7 new signals in the past week, she reported, looking up from her modified scanner as Reeve entered the workshop. Dark circles underlined her eyes, testament to sleepless nights spent reinforcing the ranch's perimeter with repurposed Astrian technology. Reeve set a steaming mug beside her workstation. "The tea you like, with honey." The simple gesture, his consistent remembrance of her preferences, pierced through her tactical focus. Her skin rippled with a warm amber glow, a chromatic response she could no longer fully control around him. "Thank you," she murmured, wrapping her fingers around the earthenware mug. The pattern of deployment suggests they're establishing a communication grid, standard hegemony procedure before sending ground forces. Reeve leaned against the workbench, his expression grave. "How much time do we have?" "Based on the progression? 3 months? Perhaps 4? She gestured to the crude holographic display she'd assembled from salvaged components. The Valkyrie consider Earth primitive but resource-rich. Their standard approach is to establish dominance quickly, using technological superiority to overwhelm any resistance. Like Europeans, with the native tribes, Reeve observed grimly. Superior weapons meant they could take whatever they wanted. Lysithea nodded, surprised as always by his ability to grasp complex situations through earthly parallels. Precisely. And like those historical conquests, the hegemony will offer protection in exchange for complete submission. Those who refuse will be eliminated, Reeve's weathered hands clenched into fists. And your people, the Confederacy, will they help? If they received my distress beacon, perhaps. But Astrian policy on non-spacefaring worlds is strict. Direct intervention is forbidden. She hesitated. And even if they made an exception, their nearest military outpost is at least 8 months away at maximum speed. The weight of her words settled between them. Earth stood alone against a threat it couldn't comprehend, with only a stranded Astrian commander and a human rancher aware of the coming storm. "Then we fight with what we have," Reeve said, resolution hardening his features. "You've been studying their tech. What vulnerabilities can we exploit?" Lysithea's admiration for this human deepened. No panic, no denial. Just calm determination in the face of impossible odds. In her centuries of military service, she'd encountered few officers with such natural composure. "The Valkyrie rely heavily on quantum-entangled communications," she explained. "If we could disrupt their network at precisely the right moment, it might buy us time. But we would need to strike simultaneously at multiple locations." Reeve considered this. "I know people. Good people who can keep secrets and follow instructions. Veterans mostly. Folks who understand what it means when something bigger than yourself is at stake." The idea was audacious, bordering on foolhardy. A handful of humans with modified farming equipment against an interstellar military power. Yet as Lysithea ran probability calculations, she realized it might be Earth's only chance. Over the following weeks, Reeve assembled his unlikely resistance force. Former military personnel, mechanics, engineers, 10 individuals chosen for their skills and discretion. Lysithea prepared reluctantly for the inevitable revelation of her identity, uncertain how these strangers would react to the truth. To her amazement, after the initial shock, they accepted both her origins and the threat. She described with solemn resolve. First Sergeant Kestrel Maddox, a retired Special Forces operative with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, summarized the group's sentiment. "Doesn't matter where the enemy comes from. Only matters that they mean harm to our home. Together, they transformed ordinary tools and equipment into weapons capable of disrupting Valkyrie technology, using principles Lysithea taught and human ingenuity she'd come to respect. Ranch trucks were outfitted with signal jammers. Hunting rifles were modified to deliver electromagnetic pulses. Communication systems were designed to operate independently of Earth's vulnerable infrastructure. As their preparations intensified, Lysithea found herself studying Reeve in quiet moments. His patient instruction of their volunteers, his unwavering courage, his ability to inspire trust. Something profound had changed in their relationship, evolving far beyond the accidental bond created by her medallion. What had begun as reluctant cohabitation had transformed into partnership, then friendship, and now, something her Astrian vocabulary lacked adequate terminology to describe. On the night before their coordinated strike against the Valkyrie network, Reeve found her on the porch, gazing at the stars that once represented home, but now held a different meaning. "Nervous?" he asked, settling beside her on the wooden steps. "Astrian commanders don't get nervous," she replied with a smile that belied her words. "Right. And Montana ranchers don't worry about alien invasions, yet here we are." The comfortable silence that followed spoke volumes. Finally, Lysithea voiced the thought that had haunted her for weeks. "If we succeed tomorrow, it will only delay them. The hegemony doesn't abandon targets easily." "Then we'll be ready next time too," Reeve said simply. "And the time after that, if necessary." She turned to face him fully. "This isn't your fight, Reeve. None of this would be happening if I hadn't crashed here." "You're wrong," he countered, his voice gentle but firm. "This became my fight the moment those Valkyrie decided my planet was theirs for the taking, and it would have happened whether you crashed here or not." His hand found hers in the darkness. "The difference is, without you, we wouldn't have stood a chance." Under the vast Montana sky, with the ranch quiet around them and danger looming on the horizon, Lysithea recognized the truth in his words and in her heart. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever came after, their fates were intertwined in ways no Astrian bonding protocol could have predicted. Dawn broke over the Montana landscape, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. Lysithea stood beside Reeve on the ridge overlooking the ranch, watching as the assembled team made final preparations. 10 vehicles were positioned strategically around the property, each loaded with the makeshift disruptors they had spent weeks constructing. "Last chance to back out," she said, though she already knew Reeve's answer. He adjusted the modified pulse emitter strapped to his forearm, a device cobbled together from her escape pod's emergency beacon and parts salvaged from the ranch's electrical systems. "Not a chance, Commander," he replied, using her military title with the hint of a smile that had become so familiar. "Besides, we've got a wedding to plan, remember?" The reference to their accidental bond, once a source of awkwardness, now an inside joke between them, eased some of the tension from her shoulders. Her chromatophores rippled with a pattern of deep blue and gold, emotions she no longer attempted to conceal from him. Kestrel Maddox approached, her military bearing evident despite the civilian clothes. "Teams are in position, awaiting your signal." Lysithea consulted her scanner one final time. The Valkyrie network had expanded exactly as predicted. 27 monitoring devices now formed a precise grid across 3 counties, building toward the critical mass needed for a stable invasion portal. "Remember," she addressed both Reeve and Kestrel, "timing is essential. The disruptors must activate simultaneously to create cascade failure. Once initiated, we'll have approximately 17 minutes before the hegemony realizes something's wrong." Reeve nodded. "And their response?" "They'll send a scout ship to investigate," Lysithea confirmed. "Which is why we need to be at the central node when the network fails. That's our only chance to send a message they'll understand." The plan was audacious. Use the Valkyrie's own communication system against them, hijacking the failure signal to transmit a warning. Earth is protected. The technical aspects were complex, but the message was simple. A bluff, perhaps, but delivered with enough conviction to make the hegemony reconsider the cost of conquest. As the teams dispersed to their assigned positions, Reeve and Lysithea boarded his truck. Horizon jumped into the back, as much a part of their unit as any human volunteer. The drive to the central node, hidden in an abandoned mining complex 30 miles east, passed in companionable silence, both lost in their thoughts about what failure would mean. Upon arrival, they worked methodically to set up their equipment, a jury-rigged transmitter that would connect to the Valkyrie network once the disruptors created an opening. The mining complex's remote location and natural mineral deposits would shield them from immediate detection. 5 minutes to synchronization, Lysithea announced, checking the chronometer she'd synchronized with all teams. Around them, the abandoned structures creaked and settled, dust motes dancing in the beams of sunlight penetrating the deteriorated roof. Reeve finished securing the power source, a combination of earth batteries and Astrian energy cells. His movements were confident, precise. In the months since her arrival, he had absorbed her teachings with remarkable aptitude, bridging the technological divide between their worlds through sheer determination and intelligence. "Reeve," she began, suddenly needing to express what might be left unsaid if their plan failed. He looked up, those earth-sky eyes meeting hers with understanding. "I know," he said simply. "Me too." The chronometer beeped its 1-minute warning. They took their positions at the transmitter, fingers poised above the activation sequence. Then, with perfect synchronicity, all teams initiated their disruptors. The effect was immediate. Lysithia's scanner displayed the Valkyrie network's collapse. Connection, points flaring and dying like stars going supernova. The cascade failure spread precisely as she had calculated, creating the opening they needed. "Now," she commanded, and Reeve triggered the transmitter. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then the mining complex began to vibrate, dust and small debris raining down as a pulse of energy emanated from their equipment. The air itself seemed to ripple as their message launched through the failing network. "Did it work?" Reeve asked, shielding his eyes from the increasingly bright glow emanating from their transmitter. Before Lysithea could respond, the scanner erupted with new readings. "Valkyrie vessel detected," she reported, adrenaline surging. "Upper atmosphere. Moving fast." They got the message, Reeve concluded. Question is, did they believe it? The answer came sooner than expected. The transmitter suddenly activated on its own, projecting a 3-dimensional image into the dusty air of the mining complex. A communication hologram, crude by Astrian standards but unmistakably of hegemony origin. A Valkyrie commander appeared. Reptilian, features arranged in what Lysithea recognized as confusion. The creature spoke, its hissing language automatically translated by her implant. "Unidentified protectorate, you claim this world is under Astrian protection, yet our records show no such designation. Identify your authority." Lysithea stepped forward, drawing herself to full military posture. "Commander Lysithea Valen, Exploratory Division, Astrian Confederacy. By authority granted under Article 7 of the Galactic Concordat, I have designated Earth a protected world pending full review by the Confederate Council. A calculated risk, invoking protocols that existed but had never been applied to a situation like this." The Valkyrie commander's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Our scans detect only one Astrian life sign. You appear to be stranded, Commander. The Concordat requires official designation, not the word of a marooned officer." This was the critical moment, the weakness in their bluff. Lysithea felt Reeve move to stand beside her, his presence somehow amplifying her confidence. "My official designation was filed via emergency beacon upon arrival," she countered smoothly. "As for being stranded," she gestured to Reeve and the technology surrounding them, "I am precisely where I choose to be, with the full knowledge and cooperation of local authorities. Earth has proven itself worthy of Confederate protection, and any hostile action will be met with appropriate response." The Valkyrie commander's expression shifted, uncertainty replacing arrogance. The hegemony was aggressive but not foolish. They avoided direct conflict with the Confederacy when possible. "This matter will be referred to Hegemony High Command for evaluation," the commander finally stated. "Until determination is made, reconnaissance operations will be suspended." The hologram flickered and vanished. Moments later, Lysithea's scanner confirmed the Valkyrie ship was retreating from Earth orbit. "They're leaving," she breathed, scarcely believing their gambit had worked. "At least temporarily." Reeve's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "How long before they figure out you were bluffing?" The bureaucracy of the hegemony moves slowly. Months, perhaps a year. Lysithea's mind was already racing ahead. "By then we can establish genuine planetary defenses. And if my original distress call reached the Confederacy..." Then Earth might get real protection. Reeve finished her thought. Not just a rancher with modified farm equipment and one very resourceful alien. The journey back to the ranch was jubilant, their improvised resistance network sharing congratulations over the communication devices Lysithea had designed. By nightfall, the teams had gathered at Reeve's home, celebrating their improbable victory, with food, drink, and stories that would never be shared beyond their circle. As the celebration continued inside, Lysithea found herself drawn to the porch, gazing up at the stars that held both her past and, perhaps, her future. She sensed rather than heard Reeve join her, his footsteps familiar after these many months. "Penny for your thoughts," he offered, using the Earth expression that had initially confused her so thoroughly. "I was thinking about home," she admitted. "About duty and belonging." Reeve leaned against the porch railing. "Wondering if your people will come for you now that you've sent up all these signals?" She nodded, her skin shifting through patterns of contemplative blue and violet. "For centuries I defined myself by my service to the Confederacy. My duty was clear, my path prescribed." Her gaze moved from the stars to the man beside her. "Now, I find myself questioning where I truly belong." "And what answer are you finding?" he asked softly. Lysithea smiled, reaching for the medallion that had accidentally bound them together. It glowed faintly in her palm, responding to the genetic signatures of both Astrian and human now encoded within. "I'm finding that home isn't necessarily the world where you were born," she said. "Sometimes it's the world you choose to defend, the people you choose to stand beside." Reeve's hand covered hers, warm and steady over the glowing medallion. "For what it's worth, I think you belong wherever you decide to put down roots, even if that's a backwater planet that's barely figured out how to leave its own atmosphere. Even if that's a ranch in Montana with a human who has a remarkable talent for surviving alien encounters," she countered, her free hand moving to rest against his cheek. "Especially there," he murmured, closing the distance between them. "Under a canopy of stars."